And second liberation heroes led by Njeru Kathangu have prevailed on Kenyans to gird the supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law. At the same time, activists in Kisumu and in Nairobi held demonstrations decrying the high cost of living, runaway corruption, and the ballooning public debt. Elfas Lagat reports on the reflections from some of the Saba Saba veterans.
Today marks 31 years since the famous Saba Saba demonstrations, a defining moment in Kenya's history that saw protesters at the Kamukunji grounds begin what would morph into a successful demand for multi-party democracy in the 1990s.
We had been detained, a group of us, Kathangu, Raila, myself, Agina, and many others, had been detained in 1982 and 86, and we were released around 1989 or 90. So what happened then, 1990, and others joined us.
By the time we mooted the Saba Saba revolution, Kenya's economy was collapsing, and an IMF program which required to overtax citizens, lay off workers, and stop salary reviews.
The veterans behind the call to reject single-party state and authoritarian rule in the country, however, decry that close to 3 decades later, the ideals of Saba Saba are far from reaching fruition.
The people must always remain vigilant to protect the hard-earned gains of Saba Saba, because that is where the manifesto for change was, 1990.
The riots and public pressure in what was dubbed as the second liberation struggle, led by among others Raila Odinga, Gitobu Imanyara, Njeru Kathangu, Professor Oyugi, James Orengo, and Charles Rubia, Kenneth Matiba, and George Anyona, the three are deceased, birthed political and constitutional reforms, including the repealing of Section 2A.
As cemented through the establishment of political parties and the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution. What are we saying is that the people of Kenya must of necessity protect and defend political parties and work out to make sure that the Kenyan Constitution remains sacred.
The famous Saba Saba led to an uprising that lasted for days, with a fierce exchange between police officers and rioters. 21 people died, dozens were injured, and more than 1,000 others were jailed by the late Daniel Arap Moi's administration. In commemoration of the Saba Saba Day, activists in Kisumu and here in the capital held demonstrations over the high cost of living, increasing taxation, rising national debt, and loss of jobs, urging the government to address these ills that are against the vision of Saba Saba.
Today, we'll be marching to the House of Parliament to dramatize the cause of youth unemployment. We will be petitioning Parliament for social safety nets for the unemployed youth in this country. There are millions of unemployed graduates, diploma holders, rural and skilled youth. Yet the current and previous regimes have no shame in stealing money meant for this vulnerable population.
The historic Kamukunji Park is now run by a community-based organization who narrate on why these very grounds are important to them.
So unapata pia through hii kitu tunafanya hapa, tumepunguza crime, tumepunguza accident. Hii place hapa mali unaona inaitwa Children's Corner.
Kitambo unajua kulikuwa na vita Saba Saba, fujo nini, lakini sasa tunafurahia na hii kiwanja vile imetengenezwa. Watu hiyo wanaweza kuja kucheza kama waendi shule.
Ni CBO ambayo tumeweza saizi ndo tuna take charge hapa katika hii historical ground ya Kamukunji ya Saba Saba, ambapo ni CBO tunajita Kamukunji Environmental Conservation Champion. Tulianza mwaka uliopita na si ndo haswa kulikuwa uwezi haswa hata kuingia hapa ndani vile unapaona.
This ground is considered to be historic for the very reason that it was pivotal in ushering in constitutional and political reforms. But 31 years later, the revolutionaries say that there is still so much ground to cover in realizing the ideals of Saba Saba. Elfas Lagat, Citizen TV, Kamukunji Grounds, Nairobi.